So today we are starting the new series of presentation by myself, and this is an open presentation on topics related to coral reef conservation, coral ecology, or anything that has to do with the environment. For those who are new to my channel, my name is Anwar Abdullah, and I'm previously the founder of Ocean Quest Global, and now I'm running a new organization called Organic Reef Rehabilitation Center. Welcome to my channel. And today we are going to talk about abusive conservation. We often speak of conservation as a moral good, a collective promise to protect what remains of our natural world. But there is an uncomfortable truth that sits beneath this narrative, one that rarely addressed with honesty. Conservation, in some cases, has been distorted. It has been repackaged, commercialized, and in certain instances turned into a tool of exploitation itself. This is what we may call abusive conservation, but it is deeper than that. Abusive conservation occurs when the language of protection is used to justify actions that do not truly serve the ecosystem, but instead it serves funding cycles, institutional visibility, and individual profits. It is when conservation becomes less about ecological integrity and more about project outputs, grants, acquisition, and performance metrics that's totally detached from the real environmental outcomes. At its core, it begins with a dangerous simplification. The assumption that nature is a machine that can be fixed quickly through intervention. In this mindset, fragile ecosystems are treated like test sites, places where experiments are carried out without fully understanding the long-term consequences. Coral reefs are seeded, transplanted, fragmented, chemically treated, and sometimes without adequate baseline study or long-term monitoring or adaptive management framework. Forests are restored with monoculture. Coastal systems are reshaped with artificial structures that looks promising in reports especially, but it failed under ecological pressures. These interventions are not always malicious in intent. Many begin with hope, urgency, and genuine concern. But good intentions do not replace ecological literacy. When action outpaces understanding, conservation becomes guesswork at the expense of living systems that cannot afford mistakes. Another dimension of abusive conservation is commodification of nature. Conservation becomes a marketplace. Projects are designed not only to heal ecosystem, but to attract donors, satisfy stakeholders, and generate visibility. Success is often measured in photos, in headlines, and in short-term survival rates rather than resilience, biodiversity, recovery, or system stability. In such environment, the appearance of success can matter more than the ecological truth. This creates a troubling incentive structure. The more dramatic the intervention, the more funding it attracts, the more visibility the project, the more successful it appears, yet the ecosystem beneath may be destabilized in silence. Equally concerning is the erosion of accountability. When projects fail, when reefs collapse after restoration attempt, when species do not return, when intervention alters habitat in unintended ways, responsibility is often diffused. Reports are silently archived, funding cycles end, teams rotate or being replaced, and the ecosystem is left to absorb the consequences. Nature carries the burden of human experimentation without consent, compensation, or recourse. We must also confront the intellectual arrogance that sometimes underpins these actions. The belief that complex ecological systems can be rapidly engineered, optimized, or corrected without long-term humility. Ecosystems are not broken machines waiting to be fixed. They are dynamic, self-organizing systems shaped over millennia. When we intervene without restraint or deep understanding, we risk replacing natural complexity with artificial fragility. To speak of abusive conservation is not to reject conservation itself. It is to demand its integrity. Real conservation is slow. It is patience. It is grounded on observation before intervention. It respects uncertainty. It prioritizes ecological continuity over visibility. It accepts that sometimes the most powerful action is restraint. And sometimes non-intervention is the most ethical choice available. If conservation is to remain a force of healing rather than harm, it must confront its own blind spots. It must move away from performative action towards accountable stewardship. It must stop treating ecosystems like laboratories for ambition and begin treating them as a living system with intrinsic rights to stability and continuity. Because in the end, the greatest danger to nature is not only neglect, it is intervention without wisdom, action without accountability, and conservation without humility. So in coral conservation, how exactly does abusive conservation look like? So there is many segments of this series, and today I'm going to share with you one of the most overlooked and serious threat to natural environment stem from our propensity to restore coral reef per se. So let's dive into the first one. This slide is a visual narrative of a hidden cost, one that is often overlooked in development, conservation, and even restoration conservation. At the top, the phrase "build today, destroy forever" is intentional. It reflects the irreversible nature of terrestrial destruction driven by our demand for construction material. What we build in a matter of months often takes millions of years to form and seconds to destroy. Let's move from far left to right. Rock harvesting. Here we see mountains being blasted and landscapes stripped bare. Rock harvesting is not just extraction. It is a permanent transformation. Entire geological formation, ecosystem, and habitat are erased. This leads to deforestation, slope destabilization, soil erosion, and increased landslide risk. Fragmentation of wildlife habitat. What's important is to understand that these landscapes are not renewable on any meaningful human timescale. Once they are gone, they are gone. Then comes the sand mining. Sand is the second most exploited natural resource after water. Sand is the most exploited natural resource on Earth after water. The scale is staggering. 50 to 60 billion tons annually. To put that into perspective, that is roughly 100,000 to 120,000 truckloads for every hour of the day, every day, worldwide. And unlike rocks, sand is often extracted from rivers, lakes, and coastlines, where systems that are alive and dynamic. The consequence includes lowering of riverbeds and water table, collapse of riverbank and infrastructure, destruction of aquatic ecosystem, accelerated coastal erosion. This is what I call invisible destruction, because it happens gradually, quietly, but an enormous scale. Then we talk about cement making. It is a climate change driver. We move now into processing, cement production. Cement is responsible for approximately 8% of global carbon dioxide emissions. If it were a country, it will be one of the largest emitters in the world. For every ton of cement produced, about 0.8 to 0.9 or 0.9 tons of carbon dioxide are released. These emissions come from two main sources. 60% comes from calcination, a chemical reaction when limestone are heated and it releases carbon dioxide. Around 40% of the emission come from fuel combustion, typically from coal, to heat the limestone. So when we talk about concrete, we are not just talking about material destruction. We are talking about major driver of the climate change. Right there. I'm circling it out. Then comes to concrete artificial reef. This is a topic that never been questioned much about. It is a misguided solution. Now, this is where things become particularly relevant to conservation. Concrete is often promoted as solution to reef restoration, but we need to critically examine this factor. Dumping concrete into the ocean does not restore ecosystem. It replaces them. These structures, they alter the seabed habitats, leaching alkaline substance into the water, and it failed to replicate the complexity and biodiversity of natural reef. It diverts funds and attention away from real ecological restoration. That is why it is a misguided solution. It diverts funds and attention away from real ecological restoration. In many cases, these are engineered solutions to ecological problems, and they miss the point entirely. When you connect all four stages, extraction, mining, processing, and deployment, you begin to see the full life cycle of the impact. The concrete scars land, fuels climate change, harms biodiversity, and ultimately impact our own future. There is no planet B. It's a phrase we all heard of. It's been printed on posters, repeated in campaigns, and shared across social media. But today I want us to pause and really confront what it actually means. Because there is no planet B is not a slogan. It is a reality check. The illusion of endless replacement. For decades, humanity has operated under the unspoken assumption that whatever damage we can replace, whatever we lose, we can rebuild. That technology will always provide a backup plan. But nature does not work that way. We can rebuild roads, we can reconstruct buildings, but we cannot recreate a rainforest that took millions of years to evolve. We cannot recreate a coral reef that was built by generations of living organisms. We cannot recreate a river system that was shaped by time, gravity, and life. These are not products. These are natural ecological processes. And once those processes collapse, they do not simply restart on demand. So, one planet one system. Everything we depend on, air, water, food, climate stability, comes from a single interconnected system. There is no separation between land and ocean, forest and atmosphere, rivers and reefs. When we mine mountains, rivers will suffer. When rivers suffer, coastline erodes. When coastline collapse, marine ecosystem decline. This is not a series of isolated problems. This is one system under great pressure. Let's talk about the cost of convenience. Modern development has been built based on the idea of extraction. Rocks for construction, sand for concrete, fossil fuel for energy. Every decision may seem small and isolated, but collectively, they reshape our planet. We are not just consuming resources, we are consuming the stability of this planet. And the most dangerous part is this. Much of this destruction is invisible to those who benefit from it. Cities rise, infrastructure expand, but somewhere else, a forest disappears, a river runs dry, a coastline retreats. Erosion, devastation. The false solution and comfortable narrative that we often hear, and we often respond to environmental damage with what appears to be a solution. Artificial replacement, engineered fixes, technological shortcuts. But many of these do not solve the problem. They are shifting it, they are masking it. Or worse, they create new problems. Because solution that destroys one ecosystem to save another is not a solution. It is a trade-off. And we can no longer afford the trade-off. Let's look at the irreversibility of loss. This is the hardest truth. Some damage cannot be undone. Species go extinct. Ecological system collapse. Natural balance disappear. And when we do, we take with them their resilience, their biodiversity, their ability to regulate the planet. We are not just losing nature, we are losing the system that makes life possible. So let's talk about hope, or let's talk about responsibility. Hope is important, but that is not enough. What we need is responsibility, because there is no planet B. There is no backup ecosystem. There is no alternative atmosphere. There is no second ocean awaiting us. This is it. One planet, one life support system, one chance to get it right. A shift in thinking, when we must move from extraction to protection, from replacement to restoration, short-term gain to long-term survival. Most importantly, from seeing ourselves, we are part of it and part of the solution. We are not managers, we are not owners. We are participating in the process that we are contributing to its demise. There is no planet B. It is not a message of fear. It is a message of clarity. It forces us to face a simple truth. The future is not something we move into. It is something we are actively shaping right now with every decision we make. So that is it. That's the first part of a very long presentation. There are a lot more to come. If you like, you may get the contact in the description below and ask for links for the weekly talks every Wednesday. Or you can also like and subscribe to my channel so that you get notified whenever I post the new topic. Thank you for watching.